What is happening, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Talking Elite Fitness. I'm Sean Woodland with Lauren Khalil and Tommy Marquez. How's everybody doing today?
Oh, good. Ready for some in-person competition, baby.
Finally. Yeah. And we'll get to watch 2/3 of it live, which is good. So,
we'll hear more on that, but also if you haven't already, when you hear this, go check out Death By, because I popped in for a surprise appearance to discuss some of that as well.
Yes, there was a very good discussion on this week's episode of Death By about that. So we are certainly going to go into some things and try to answer some questions like we try to do and provide some clarity on this whole thing. Also we'll go through our other headlines, and we want to preview the big semifinal going on this weekend over in France, the Europe semifinal. They'll be sending 10 men, 10 women, and 8 teams to Fort Worth, Texas to compete in the CrossFit Games. So a lot of exciting stuff. This is one of the best. I love this time of year. 3 straight weekends of live competition, qualifying spots on the line. I think sometimes I get more hyped up for semifinals than I do games, because I also like, too, now that we have standardized programming, sort of that common thread that runs through. It's, who's going to beat the event record, and this person's going to smash this one, and being able to build that anticipation. So really looking forward to watching the best in the world throw down in person, because that's what we all want to see more of.
That's what matters.
Exactly.
All
right, before we get into it, want to thank one of our sponsors for today, and that is Garmin. If you're looking for a smartwatch that does absolutely everything, and I mean everything, you're going to want to check out a Garmin. It has up to 16 days of battery life in smartwatch mode. You can get emails, calls, texts, and alerts with your iPhone and your Android. As far as fitness tracking and taking care of yourself is concerned, they have preloaded activities from high-intensity training, cardio, strength, yoga, Pilates, more. And you can also use it to track your CrossFit workouts. You can go round by round and really dive deep into a detailed look of what you're doing in the gym. It also has a training readiness score, gives you your training status, performance metrics, recovery time, HRV status. It's a wrist-based heart rate monitor, has sleep tracking. And Cole Sager, who has been a Garmin athlete for more than a year officially, but he's been on board the Garmin train for like 8 years. He talked to us about why he's such a big fan of the sleep tracking feature.
Is sleep tracking. I love the sleep tracking. I have worn and used a lot of different wearables and devices that measure sleep tracking. But what I really like about them is they will give you a sleep quality score, and that's based off of how much REM sleep did you get, how much time awake did you spend, and what level of deep sleep did you get, as well as also looking at your sleep routine. And so just having those metrics to be able to determine, like, hey, is my sleep routine set up nicely, is really good to help people dial in their sleep, because sleep is ultimately the best thing for recovery, mental health. It fixes an array of things. So sleep tracking is definitely at the top of my list there.
Big fan of the sleep tracking thing, and he is right about that. I got good sleep last night. My Garmin told me you got plenty of deep sleep. Not enough, but got a lot of good deep sleep. So feeling good. But check them out, Garmin.com. If you're watching this, just scan the QR code there at the bottom of your screen. Look, if you're a golfer too, it'll act as a caddy for you.
Oh yeah,
it's distance and what club you should hit on certain golf courses. It'll track your steps, and at the end of the day, maybe you'll get a notification that you hit your step goal. But it is really, like I've said this before, having Jarvis from the Avengers on your wrist. Ton of stuff. Love them. I'm a big fan of mine. Really enjoyed learning more about it. Garmin.com is where you want to go to check that out. All right, let's get into headlines for today. Big one happening today as we record this. We wanted to get this one out a little bit earlier than we usually do, just because competition is starting this weekend, and that is Sara Sigmundsdottir taking to Instagram. And I'll read from her post. You can see it up on the screen if you're watching this. It's time for me to be fully honest about what has been going on the past 3 years. I have talked about some of the things, such as the ACL tear in 2021, finding out 8 months post-surgery that I no longer have an ACL after my body rejected the graft, and then the ruptured elbow tendon that wrecked my semis last year. Alongside all of this, I have felt incredibly off with symptoms of chronic tiredness, dizziness, cramps, joint swelling up, and many other things. For the longest time, I chalked it off as my body's response to overtraining. After periods of resting and still feeling this way, I sought opinions from several medical professionals. 12 months ago, I finally received answers and was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called reactive arthritis. The root cause of all this is a failed box jump in May 2020, where I sustained a nasty cut on my shin, which resulted in an infection that I carried for a while without knowing it. This sent my immune system into overload, and from there, the condition emerged. The good news is that this is 100% treatable. And then she goes on from there. It's going to be kind of an experimental process for her trying to find the right medicine. But I think a lot of people thought, and I think I'm one of them, now that she's under the guidance of Justin Kotler, I think that's a great fit. That maybe this was the year that she finally got back on track and we saw her back at the games. Wish her all the best, but just another setback for Sara Sigmundsdottir here.
Yeah, and I've been speaking with her agent Snorri for several months about this before she actually announced it, and I really feel for her because the amount of trial and error it takes to actually find the medication that is going to work for her and allow her to be healthy. And I mean, competing at the highest level is a lot on your body, and when you're dealing with something as severe as this, it just, gosh, you feel for her. And she, in my opinion, makes the sport better. She is a great champion of the sport. She's a great for a great influence for everyone, that the sport is better with her there. So I hope she's able to, take some time off, heal the way she needs to, and find the help and treatment that she so much needs.
Yeah, for sure, Lauren. I mean, you said it before. We've both been in talks with her camp, and been clued into some of this behind the scenes a while back, and just under a respect for her scenario, like letting it sort out. There's a physical element to it. There's also a mental element, right? Of like an athlete that was so close to climbing the mountaintop, right? Like let's be honest, 2015. I think most people who were there and saw it could rightfully think that maybe Sara, absent of some execution mistakes, was the fittest on earth.
I mean, had the scoring system been a little different in that last event,
absolutely. And came in like a force of nature, right? And rightfully so, became one of the biggest faces of the sport, and because of her personality and the energy that she brings, and then to have a continuous set of setbacks, whether that's withdrawals, whether it's cracked rib, whether that's knee, whether that's a box jump, the mental toll of not trusting your body and not wondering if the things that you want to do will physically harm yourself further. Like the things that typically make you happy or you use as your outlet are suddenly gone and could be actually the root cause of further problems. It's just a tough pill to swallow, and it's a tough thing to find when you're trying to get your way back. And like you said, there's a trial and error process for the medicine. Like I know she has a good team around her, and she has the right people that are keeping her kind of focused on the end goal. But the byproduct of that is that sometimes you get this thing where, hey, we're like 70 to 80% of the way there. And so that manifests itself in, hey, I did the open, I did the quarterfinals, and people get excited again. And then suddenly, the rug gets pulled again.
Yeah. And I really thought this was going to be the year, especially when you go back to the quarterfinals. And after those first two workouts, she was way on the outside looking in, and then managed to vault all the way. I think she gained like 36 spots or something like that to get herself, into qualifications position for a semifinal. Was really looking forward to. In fact, we'll talk about this later. Our top storylines that we're going to watch in Europe. She was definitely going to be one of them for me.
Yeah, and it's we're now seeing. I tend to tie her, Katrin, and Tia together from a competitive career standpoint because they showed up at the highest level of the sport in terms of podium finishes at the same time. Katrin obviously competing for years prior. And when, they replicated that podium experience the next year. And it's tough to see, obviously she's getting older. There are other aspects of career that come into her mind, whether she's looking at school and all these other things. And so you start to wonder where exactly, what's the time frame? What's the window that's remaining? Well, maybe she hasn't had quite the same training wear and tear on her body. It's like father time is undefeated, but I still think that based, like you said, on those event results, She still got some pop in her bat, to take a baseball reference. She may not hit for the cycle or the same average, but she's still got some dingers left that I think people will rightfully rejoice when she does come back.
Kirk Gibson, 1988 World Series, right?
Yep. Oh God, that's yep.
Doing the fist pump.
Doing the off of my guy Eckersley.
Exactly. Remember right where I was when that happened.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck to Sara, and hopefully that she can get healthy and back into competing, because like you said, the window is starting to close a little bit. Next thing we wanted to talk about, and we're going back here because, first of all, Tommy and I last week when we recorded, this news about the semifinal streaming came out pretty much right when we finished, and we thought about jumping back on and talking about it. And I'm glad we didn't, because I have a much more, I think, measured reaction now than I did a week ago. And even though I knew it was coming, it still got to me more than I thought it would. But first thing we want to do is let's just, for those of you who may not have heard it,
if you've been totally disconnected from internet,
just very quickly, here's the press release that was sent out, and this was the headline was, CrossFit announces multiple ways to experience the 2024 semifinals. A full slate of media coverage will be available on Saturday and Sunday during each competition, along with a Friday experience show at the Europe, North America West, and North America East semifinals. So they write in the press release. I'm trying to find the key paragraph. It's the second one here. In addition, the Europe semifinal, North America West semifinal, and North America East semifinal will feature a semifinals kickoff show on the Friday of each competition that will serve as a warm-up for the main event. After launching the live CrossFit Games podcast.
The way you're reading this, I can't take you seriously right now.
I can't take this seriously. After launching the live CrossFit Games podcast with the semifinals in 2023, which, to be fair, Chase Ingraham, who we're going to hear from here in a second, Wex, Mike Halpin, Brian Friend, they're the ones that cobbled this together. And they're like, okay.
Not CrossFit.
Yeah. CrossFit will be enhancing the show's production value and increasing the number of athletes, coaches, content creators, and other guests who appear to offer insights on the competition. Chase Ingraham will return to provide highlights and recaps of the action from Friday's events during the first week of semifinals, with Adrian Conway hosting weeks 2 and 3. Now, this is the part that has gotten a lot of the attention. This is the quote that is in the press release. We're excited to deliver a live show that will set up the final 2 days of competition at each of these semifinals. On top of live podcast elements from various parts of the competition on Friday, said Dave Castro, general manager of sport and education at CrossFit, think of the podcast as the appetizer to the main course, where fans' passions are ignited and primed for the final 2 days of competition. So,
I want to hear Dave say that. I want to hear him.
Let's just go on. Can we just agree from the start? Dave did not write or say that.
He did not. No. All right. So if you just get that, like a lot of people just did, I was like, well, I don't know anything about what's going on here. I don't know what an experience show is. I know you're going to have some people on. I don't know what I'm going to be able to watch. None of that. All right. So let's do this first. Let Tommy talk to Chase Ingraham to figure out, like, what is this going to be? And after you listen to Chase, I think you're going to feel a little bit better about what the quote-unquote experience show is going to be. So here's Chase Ingraham, who's hosting week number 1 from Europe and also doing play-by-play for the actual broadcast on Saturday and Sunday.
All right, now let's welcome in our guest, Chase Ingraham. Chase, thanks for taking some time away from us, both lamenting about the Cowboys' offseason moves. Talk a little bit about semifinals. How you doing, man?
Well, if you're talking about how am I doing as a Cowboys fan, not good. Not good at all. But as far as getting excited for semifinals, I get to leave. I'm leaving for France tomorrow. So, Wednesday. I don't know when this is going to air. So Wednesday afternoon is I'll be leaving. So I'm very excited as far as that's concerned.
That's awesome. And, you'll be kind of spearheading what was recently announced as another inclusion in the semifinals coverage last week, when they talked about the viewing experiences at the CrossFit Games podcast.
Yeah.
Will be kind of revamping what they did last year. I think, is that fair to say?
Yes.
Friday. Yeah,
I would say it's fair and it's needed as far as if anybody remembers what we did last year. Like that was the most bootleg coverage we could possibly have put together using other people's podcast equipment week one. Thank you to Steven Wexler out there who saved everybody with us stealing basically all of his stuff and ruined his plans for the week. And then 3 volunteers or guys with cell phones on 2G, I think it was what we were working with that first weekend. And then we had some help as the weeks went on. But yeah, so the Friday coverage that they just announced is going to be like what we did last year, but instead of like a last second, hey, please save us type attitude, it is, we'll take the concept and build upon what that is. And that's what they want to do. And if anybody, what I liken it to is, okay, take what we did, keep the same atmosphere, but maybe put a better camera on the field of play, as well as see guests that are in the booth. So if you guys remember what Rogue basically did this past season with the alternative coverage feed, where they just kind of had a live feed going, and then the guests at the desk were just commenting as things went. It'll be more like that with the flair and flavor that we had at semifinals last year. So for those that are worried, you will be able to see the action actually happening, but they say it's different than the coverage because it's not going to be 4 cameras placed around the competition floor with 2 roaming and isolated headshots and maybe some graphics of every athlete and workout descriptions like that. It's going to be a laid back version. So if you and me were sitting on a couch together, mic'd up, which is probably not a good idea, depending on the sport that we're watching at the time. Yeah. It'd be like us watching from the couch, but you could see what we're looking at as well as see us at the same time. But we're going to do that with much more guests than we had last year. Last year was such, like I said, it was a very, very last minute, Hail Mary to try to get some coverage for those because there was nothing planned for that day at all. And getting guests at the last second who were there on site was very hard to do. And the idea is taking a little extra time to get guests that are local to the area, but also new to the coverage scene to just expand the net of people that want to watch. So you've seen it, this as, seminar staff members that are local to the area and ones that we know, event directors that come on there, international affiliates, reps and VPs that come on. I mean, we snuck Don Fall on the podcast last year and guests like that. So content creators who just want to expand the amount of people that will be commenting on it, just to change it up a little bit as far as who's talking about it, but still not turning it into a full-on broadcast that you and I are particularly used to when it comes to covering the sport, which will be Saturday and Sunday.
Yes. And just kind of digging into that a little bit, will you guys be leveraging some of the same cameras, or is it just like, hey, we're going to have a separate set come in and knock this out?
Yeah, it won't be the same camera feeds as you would get on the actual broadcast, but it won't be the cameras that we had, because what that was this little guy duct taped to a pole, hoping that it wouldn't overheat 10 hours into a broadcast. But it'll be a big wide shot of a legitimate camera feed, not like the CrossFit Games age group division, so nobody panic there. It's going to be a little bit shot. And the best angle I can describe is what they took from us. If you guys remember, on Friday, we covered the live feed with webcams and cell phones, right? But at the same time, the media team that was there on site was actually covering them on the floor and for post-production. And so what they're going to do is a little bit of the same thing. And you can actually see what this is going to potentially look like if you go to the CrossFit Games YouTube channel and look at the events that were reproduced based off the live calls that we were doing at the time. So they'll have some roaming cam, but they had one big wide shot of the entire competition floor fixed there the entire time. And it'll be more like that, what you will see, but you will get live real-time commentary from myself. So I'll be hosting the whole thing end to end on Friday for week 1. And then I'll be passing the mic off to Adrian Conway for weeks 2 and week 3. So you'll get live commentary. You will see a live feed. It just won't be as detailed and isolated as a real broadcast would be, which is what you'll see on Saturdays and Sundays.
All right. Now, when you hear that, you're going to get to watch some competition. It may not be at the broadcast level, but there will be a camera on the floor. Why didn't that information get out earlier?
Because that announcement, the written announcement, was actually an appetizer for the actual information, Sean, that will ignite the passions and fire of the community for what was to come.
Well,
Time out. But if I go to a restaurant as the consumer, I'm the one that orders the appetizer. So did the consumer ask for this appetizer?
No, but we'll get into that. We're going to get into that in just a second. But I think when you hear Chase talk about it, this sounds much better than what was presented in print. Had all these, and look, I'm not saying the reaction would have been completely and totally positive and hey, everything's great. But if you had put this out saying, we're gonna have a game camera that will provide coverage of the action on the floor, along with commentary from Chase Ingram and a host of guests throughout the day, that lands a little bit better than not providing any details at all.
When you tell me podcast, if I'm reading that tells me it's audio only. The right. The way that this press release was written didn't do any favors for CrossFit. The more details, the more transparency. To me, there should have been a podcast talking about the podcast in order to give us more insight.
And this stream, so everyone's clear, is not going to be on the CrossFit Games YouTube channel. It's going to be on the CrossFit Games podcast channel. I don't understand why that decision's being made, because you're essentially taking something that I'm guessing your goal is to get eyeballs on this. You're putting it on a channel that has, I think, more than
5.43 subscribers versus 1.03 million.
Why are you not putting that on and I guess the argument is we want to discern between the broadcast coverage and the podcast coverage, but couldn't you do that with a playlist? And I asked Don Fall this question, I think a little more than a year ago. It's like, why, when you have this podcast, are you putting it on its own channel when you have this megaphone? Anyway, just so people know, go to the CrossFit Games podcast channel, not the CrossFit Games channel, on Friday to watch it. All right. Tommy, you have anything to add to that before I get to the...
I mean, we share a lot of the same sentiments that there shouldn't even be a separate podcast channel.
I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
And that but
well, because I think of us who are really deep in it and we're subscribed to all of these channels, and it still is a little confusing. But if I went to my affiliate and I was like, hey, you guys, you can watch Friday's coverage just under this different channel, I guarantee none of them would have any idea what I was talking about.
Probably,
because they're subscribed to the CrossFit Games channel, not the other one.
It also makes me question how much they actually know about dining protocol based on these appetizers. I mean,
well, this is the other thing I want to play. And John Woolley, our good friend John Woolley from Make Quads Great Again, he put this clip on his Instagram story shortly after this news came out, a couple days afterwards, I think, or a day or so. And I reached out to him. I said, hey, man, do you mind if I use this clip? Because I think it's important for people to see. He said, sure. He sent it to me. So this is from an interview that John and Nikki did on Kettlebells and Cocktails with Don Fall. And I'm going to play a quick clip of it here. And you're going to hear Don talking here about a question John asked about taking money out, making cuts, raising affiliate fees and stuff like that. This was Don's response.
We took a lot of costs out of the business, and we're going to continue to take. So if we look at sport, for example, our primary goal this year on sport is one, we want to deliver a great experience for our athletes, for members of the community, for affiliates. We still spend way too much money on sport. We're going to take a meaningful amount of money out of that. That's money that we can reinvest in the long-term drivers of growth, reaching more people, investing in our affiliates. So that is a meaningful focus for us this year.
All right. So there you have that. So they said, Don Fall said 3 months ago on this show, we spent too much on sport. We are going to take a meaningful amount of money out of it. And here you go. Now, I don't have the exact number, but Tommy, you and I have been around these productions before, whether it's sanctioned events or regionals, open announcements. My guess is that by not doing the full broadcast stream from 3 of the semifinals they control, that they are saving, I mean, between $100,000 and $150,000 total.
Yeah, if not more, depending on the venue costs, right? Like, yeah, it's a significant amount of money, at least as far as like that's concerned. But also at the same time, like, yeah, I don't know. it's always weird to me when you like Don couldn't be more clear there. They're going to divest some money from the sport. They're spending too much money on it. That was clear. But where I'm curious is the details of that. It's like, all right, well, what are the areas where you're spending much more money? Because not every dollar spent in the sport is equal, right? Like there are certain things that you can invest in that have a larger return or that have better bang for your buck that can actually generate revenue versus just a sunk cost. And is that attitude on spending reflected in all decisions made around the sport and the company? Or is there still loose spending practices in other areas that aren't being cleaned up, that aren't necessarily front of house facing that people are aware of? So that's a whole other conversation, but it's interesting to me that with the expanded revenue gain from quarterfinals, right? And then having the gain in income from less expenditures of CrossFit operating those 3 semifinals and now having semifinal partners that run it. Same with the games and age groups and adaptives. That's money saved too. Is there not that level of money recouped to be able to stream for an extra 3 days total across semifinals? And what is probably one of regionals used to be up there in terms of like total engagement because of the variety in multiple weeks on top of games.
I think it's okay to make a business decision. I think it's good and smart to make business decisions, but again, we go back to the communication and transparency. When were these decisions made, and letting people know this quickly before semifinals begins? And we talked about it on Death By. I don't know that it would have changed results to get more seats at venues by letting people know that one day is not streamed earlier. And again, it's during the running event, so the least TV friendly, so to speak. But I'm just wondering again, where is that money being reinvested? And is this the new normal for CrossFit? Is this the direction that we're headed in long term? Or is this a triage scenario where we're just trying to stop the bleeding, save some money so that eventually we can see true growth with the sport?
Yeah, 2 things. I think you're right. Look, it's good to make a business decision. I think last year it's pretty well known that they got a little too far out over their skis with the money they spent on semifinals, and as a result, some people lost jobs. And I think you bring up a really good question. Is this now the way it's going to be moving forward? Now, I think if you kind of read the tea leaves and everything Dave has said on his weekly recaps, I doubt the season is going to look the same next year. Now, how drastic those changes are, I don't know. But Dave has said more or less things are going to be different. So maybe this isn't an issue because streaming might be on somebody else or broadcasting might be on somebody else. But it's from my point. When I first, and again, I knew it was coming. It was discouraging because it was like, okay, now it's real. Because I want to see the sport presented the way that I think it should be presented, in a way that makes it look like it belongs alongside other major sports with, traditional elements of graphics and cameras and using the TV truck and professionals on the floor
That's how you grow,
right? And right? Now look, there are other, obviously it's going to be good to be able to see some of this action on Friday. I want to make that clear. It's like, as Chase said, this is not just going to be people sitting on the couch talking with action going on in the background. You're going to get to see, I'm guessing, like a wide shot of the floor. Maybe they have a couple other cameras down there, but you'll get to see something. Like, you'll get to be able to keep track of the competition. So that's good.
And here, Chase is going to commentate during it, and he's a great commentator.
Absolutely. Well, that's the world.
It's not a knock at Chase. It's not a knock at the CrossFit Games podcast. It's just is this what we can expect for coverage moving forward? Are we going to keep trying to save money, and next year, well, only one day we can afford a broadcast, and the podcast is going to be 2 of the 3 days? It raises more questions for me.
Agreed. And I think that's the part that I've struggled with, is that it's really hard. And I think why the community is reacting the way it is because they've gotten used to a certain thing for so long. And then once you start taking things away, it's really hard to get them back.
Yeah. It's also like Does CrossFit want to run the sport?
That's a really good question too. Yeah.
And if so, do they want to see it grow? Because if so,
should they run the sport?
If those are any of those questions are yes, then you would have to do some serious convincing of and spin zoning to make all of these decisions fit into that answer,
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, a lot of questions. But I think one thing I really did want to clear up before we reacted to something that we didn't have the details on. Wanted to talk to Chase. Glad we got that perspective, because I think it's important for people to know that yes, you're going to get to see some action. And I think too, I think in the press release they had it. Hey, all these other semifinals. I keep saying regional. All these other semifinals are going to have streams. Yeah, but that's a wide strike zone right there. So, for example, Asia, I don't know what theirs is going to look like, but theirs might be, one camera that shows the floor and they pipe in the floor announcer. I don't know if they're going to have commentators. I think they've had commentators before in South America, and that stream has actually looked pretty good. They've done a good job. Toran is going to have a stream of all 3 days, and that's because that crew, not CrossFit, the Toran crew is paying for that. And our good friend Jeremy Austin's going to be there, calling play-by-play. I think it's I think Pip Malone might be with him. Don't quote me on that, but they have a broadcast team. They're going to do all 3 days. So you get to watch that, but that's separate from CrossFit. But there's going to be, I think you're going to see like a wide variety of what qualifies as a quote unquote stream. And if people are okay with, hey, all we want to do is just see the action, well, that's going to get accomplished by the Friday show. Like that is going to get accomplished by that. So
yeah,
we'll tune in, see what happens. And then
Shall see.
And I think another thing that needs to be said too is that you're going to miss more than half. Well, not miss, but more than half of the team competition is going to be shown this way. Only one of the events for the individuals is going to be shown this way. And I mean, I guess if you ask people, which would you rather have? I think they're guessing, probably going to say we'd rather see more individuals than teams. Although
James Hobart has a hot take on Death by about this.
Okay, I have to.
I know. I love when he has a hot take because sometimes he's like just going straight down the party line.
James is very diplomatic. He and I kind of share that in common, but yeah, I like when he gets a hot take. But all right, that's we'll see what happens. But we just I think what we wanted to do here is just provide some context and some more details on what people can expect, because that's been the biggest question when this first came out. Is like, well, what does that mean? And I when I read that, I go, I don't know what to expect here. And as I like to say, and I stole this from one of my favorite podcasts, like happiness is measured by expectations. And when you don't know what to expect, when you think well, I take that back. You know what you expect, and then that's not what it's going to be. Then you better tell me what I'm getting is at least somewhat close to that. And I think they could have done that had they provided some more details in the press release. They could have saved themselves some grief. But okay, let's get to something fun now. We are partnering with our good friends at Barbells for Bullies. Dog days of summer are coming up. We're trying to get some dogs some homes. This is our dog of the week. If you're watching, this is Fred. He's a 6-year-old male. He's super sweet. Knows some basic commands. Likes to snuggle. Mild-mannered. Very low-key. Sounds like an ideal pet for you and your family. He hails from the great city of Savannah, Georgia. But right now he has a temporary home in Waleska, Georgia.
No way.
In a foster family. Yes.
It's where my grandpa was born and raised.
All right.
Aw.
Well, Fredy is looking for an experienced owner who can help him when he gets overstimulated and can give him the love and attention he deserves. He is currently with @FTTF Pitbull. And if you're interested, his application, you can find it there's a link in the description on the Instagram post from Barbells for Bullies. They are also very good at arranging for out-of-state adoptions. If there's someone out of state who wants to welcome Fredy into their home, that dog is adorable. I would take him in a second.
Yeah.
Barbells for Bullies, our good friends Alex and Lindsay, they do fantastic work, and we wanted to help them out and pair up with them to help get some dogs some homes, because there are a lot of dogs out there that need some homes, and Barbells for Bullies does a good job of pulling dogs out of shelters and getting them into foster care, and they take care of all the expenses. Fantastic organization. So check them out at Barbells for Bullies on Instagram, and let's get Fred his forever home. That's a good looking pup right there.
Help Fred out.
Help save Fred, everybody. All right, go check him out. Barbell for
Such
Bullies.
a good name.
Yeah, my parents had a
Fred.
background named Fred, so that was which, by the way, is I am in. If you're wondering why my background is different, I'm in my mom's house right now. Trying to help her out through some medical stuff here, so I'm in the guest room, and everything in here is an antique, including me. So I fit very well here. But Barbells for Bullies, barbellsforbullies.com, Barbells for Bullies on Instagram. Check them out. We will continue to have our dog of the week, and we're going to get some dogs. Some good homes, okay? So do some good, adopt a dog, change your life. All right, that's going to do it for Headline.